on 5 News, gearing up for their biggest challenge yet. We see how health services around the country are preparing to fight coronavirus.
There's a big price being paid by doctors and nurses across the country. Their lives, their social lives, their families.
But for some, the virus has already taken loved ones and robbed them of the chance to say goodbye.
You also want to be there to hold a hand, to let them know that you're with them, to remind them how much they're loved.
Also, we'll have the latest news on how the government will help support self-employed people. Plus, tough new powers to fine or arrest people who are breaking the lockdown rules and...
I'll be clapping for the NHS tonight.
Woo! How you can get involved in a nationwide show of thanks to the heroes of the NHS. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Danny Sinha. Ventilators ordered, makeshift hospitals being built, and hundreds of thousands of volunteers standing by. The UK is preparing to deal with a surge in coronavirus cases, but there are still concerns over supplies of protective equipment for doctors and pressures building not just on hospitals, but also on social care providers. Our health correspondent Catherine Jones reports.
So when patients come in, they'll come in and be met by our lovely nursing team.
This new health centre in North Glasgow is to assess people with suspected coronavirus. In the space of a week, the project has been devised, organised, equipped, staffed and is seeing patients referred through 111.
Be brought directly into one of our consulting rooms.
Dr Kerry Naylon gave me a FaceTime tour of the facility, which will take the pressure off local GPs and hospitals.
So many people have worked incredibly hard to really pull and say and stay this up. And that's not just our clinical staff, our admin team, our security guards, everybody. This is a hugely different.
The pace of change is evident at the Excel Exhibition Centre in East London too, where one construction worker filmed its conversion into a field hospital.
This hall is a kilometre long.
Today, the chief nurse made an urgent appeal for staff willing to redeploy here to man the 4,000 beds.
Early next week we'll be opening up here at the Excel, and I need more nurses and doctors to help me make sure that we've got sufficient care being given.
But as well as creating a completely new hospital here, nationwide the NHS is making a massive effort to empty the hospitals it already has. In England, the aim is to free up 15,000 beds by not admitting people who were to have routine operations, and another 15,000 by discharging anyone who is medically fit to leave.
But delays discharging frail and elderly people have been a problem for the NHS for a long time. And despite an extra £1.6 billion, many fear that emptying wards into the overstretched social care sector could prove disastrous.
By the very nature of actually people being able to be discharged from hospital, which is the right thing to do, but if it's not done safely, if it's not done with the right support, that people have the equipment, etc., then you could actually be infecting a group of people who at the moment are safe.
The other immediate concern is protective clothing for frontline staff. Distribution did ramp up over the weekend. Doctors say it has to keep coming.
There is a big price being paid by doctors and nurses across the country. Their lives, their social lives, their families, and we just need to recognise that. And the way the government needs to recognise that is keep supplying us with the maximum amount of safe kit.
From managers and admin staff to nurses and carers, everyone involved in the treatment of the sick and the care of the vulnerable is working flat out. How much of a difference these preparations make will become clear in a few short weeks.
So Cathy, everyone putting out the stops, but concern about the ventilators. That's right, there are currently 8,000 ventilators available to the NHS, and 8,000 have been ordered. But today the Prime Minister's spokesman said of those 8,000, thousands would arrive in the coming weeks, thousands more in the coming months. Now, that has led to obvious concern about the timeline just being too long for these potentially life-saving pieces of equipment. But just like the NHS and the care sector,
industry is trying its very best to shorten that timeline. There's a consortium of more than 20 British companies, among them Airbus, McLaren, also Microsoft involved, Rolls-Royce, who are attempting to start mass production of models that are already authorised, potentially by the beginning of next week. Let's just hope, because every single one of those could potentially save a life.
Well, preparations can be made when it comes to infrastructure, but the sad fact is we also have to be prepared for the loss of our loved ones. Dozens of patients are dying every day after contracting the virus, and the heartbreaking reality is that their families can't even say goodbye. Paul lost his grandmother on Mother's Day.
On Saturday morning, and she took a turn for the worse. Enough so that an ambulance had to get called, and then she obviously got taken in. No one was obviously able to go with that. You also want to be there to hold the hand, to let them know that you're with them, to remind them how much they're loved, to, whatever it is that you could possibly do. You just want to be there with them. You just think that you've got countless conversations ahead, so you think, you just have your normal chit chat as you would do. How's everything doing? Okay, let's just give you an update on this, and you think you'll see him tomorrow or the next day or the next week, and then over the weekend. But for those who do, have a loved one in there and everything, my heart goes out to them, because we're not the first family who's going to go through this, and we're not going to be the last. So she got married when she was 20, so 64 years they were married. There's not a lot more we can do at the moment. It's just making sure that we're constantly checking in with him, and that he knows he's there. Of course, he's able to go out into his garden, which he likes doing that anyway, so that's a comforting thing. And because we're next door, we can speak to him from the garden and things, so he can still be with him to an extent. But it's just not the same as what it would be in any other circumstance.
That was Paul Green speaking to us there about his grandmother, who sadly passed away over the weekend. Some other updates now, and 2 men in their 60s and 80s have become the first British prisoners to die after contracting the virus. The inmates from 2 different jails both reportedly had underlying health issues. At least 19 prisoners and 4 prison staff have tested positive for COVID-19 across 10 different sites. Threatening police officers with coronavirus and coughing or spitting at them could get offenders up to 2 years behind bars. There have been a spate of these assaults in recent days, prompting prosecutors to issue a public statement warning they will not hesitate to charge anybody who threatens emergency workers. And Prince Charles is said to be enormously touched by all the get well messages that he's received. The Queen's son is self-isolating at his home in Scotland after testing positive for COVID-19. He's said to be at his desk working, using video conferencing and calls to carry out his royal duties. Now, in the last few minutes, the Chancellor has announced exactly what the government is going to do to support self-employed workers. Well, let's go straight to our political editor, Andy Bell, who's in Downing Street for us. And Andy, what has he had to say?
Yes, Danny, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, still speaking, still giving the details, but he wanted to say to self-employed workers, his message was, you have not been forgotten. And now onto the nitty-gritty, and bear with me because it's still coming through. He says that self-employed will receive a taxable grant worth 80% of their average monthly profits over the last 3 years, up to a maximum of £2,500 a month. And clearly that's very similar to what was promised to salaried employees last week. And he says that this scheme will run for 3 months at least, and it will be extended for longer if he thinks that's necessary. And he says that this scheme to help the incomes of the self-employed is one of the most generous in the world.
Absolutely, and we've also had an update from the Home Office today on plans to crack down on people who flout the lockdown rules.
That's right. In emergency legislation, which has just come into force today, the police will have the powers to fine people £60 if they're not complying with the social distancing rules, if people are gathering for any reason, and that £60 they can pay £30 if they pay it quickly. But if there's a second offence, that could go up to £120 and so on. And as with any fines, if people won't pay the fines, there is always the possibility that those people could end up in court. Now, that's been welcomed by the Home Secretary today, who has also been talking about the fact that she is trying to get more police officers back onto the front line.
Over 1,500 more police officers have been recruited. We are also talking to the Treasury, who have basically confirmed that we are now going to relax the rules, give the support that's needed to retiring officers who recently left the police force to come back, but also those who are due to retire quite soon as well.
So more powers for the police, but everyone is making it clear that they really want this to be policing by consent without having to use any of these powers.
Absolutely. Andy Bell, thank you. What about 5 News? How expectant mothers are being affected by the coronavirus outbreak. And we visit the farms struggling to meet the rising demand for produce. We'll see you after the break.